Personal highlight of my conference back in 2005 was certainly the moment when all the participants arrived in Bonn, and the hard work that my team and I had been doing for almost a year finally paid off, and that kind of moment when you know the people are here, the conference venue is set up. You've got you've got the catering, you've got the sound technology, you've got just everything in place, and people are starting to come in, and you get face to a name, and the conference kicks off. That was really special. And my other very nice memory, obviously, from 2005 is the final evening, the last party, the big party that closed the week of deliberations, where a lot of pressure and a lot of sleep deprivation finally fell off of me, and my team and I, we could celebrate our success. Well, obviously, the main difference that BIMUN and BIMUN SINUB really has is that it takes place in Germany's United Nations city, the city of Bonn, the beautiful city on the Rhine River, the former capital of Germany, of West Germany, I should say. So the conference happens at a site that brings together both very recent history, German history, European history, as well as 21st century modern international environment with a lot of think tanks, a lot of United Nations organizations, and a very international and very can-do spirit. Again, paired with that bit of laissez-faire attitude in the Rhineland that I cherish so much, and it's happening all in one place. So in Bonn, you will find a lot of international people, a lot of people who are very proud of being from the Rhineland as well. It's a university town with lots of influx of intellectual capital. It's a city that's in the heart of Europe, really. And on the Rhine River, a very beautiful surrounding. So I really can't think of anything that speaks against Bonn as a city and the BIMUN conferences as being held there. So 20 years ago, it was the right decision and at the right time to come up with a Model United Nations conference hosted in the German United Nations city. So the conference in 2005 was only the fourth BIMUN SINUB conference, and as opposed to the 2004 conference, where I too had a role to play as executive committee member for fundraising, and compared to the conference in 2003, where I was a participant representing France in the UN Security Council, I had a fair impression of three very different conferences. Obviously, the first one, 2003, I was a participant. I played along. It was good fun. It was great fun. In 2004, I came aboard as an executive committee member for fundraising pretty late in the summer, where most of the fundraising had actually been done. And we ended up having a conference that was only 4 days as opposed to 5 days in the previous years, because of a significant sponsor that bailed out at the last minute. But we managed the conference in 2004 nonetheless, and the conference 2005, we had it funded. We had a 5-day conference, so on the face of it, this was the most palpable difference, the most special thing to have a conference that's fully funded, where you don't have to worry about cutting corners. Honestly, it's hard to remember, and not because it has been almost 16 years since the conference came into being. It's simply that as someone who's in charge of bringing so many people from all over the world to your city to host the conference, to organize the conference, you're basically in a tunnel. The mental load, I guess that's the term that's fashionable these days, the things you have to think about really turn yourself into someone who's very focused, and you're really waiting for something to go wrong. So there's a lot of pressure, a lot of excitement, very little sleep, and you're in a very functional mode. You know, I have snippets here and there of things I do remember. We had a bit of a challenge getting someone from Asia into Germany. He ended up on the Bonn railway station in the federal police custody, and we were able to get him out because there was something wrong with his visa. I do remember we had a lot of celebrations around the week in terms of you know, very colorful and very nice conference venue. We had decorated with banners and balloons and all these kind of things. That's something I do remember quite well. Obviously, I remember the reception at the town hall in the city of Bonn. But other than that, I was very much in a tunnel, and I was very glad that the conference was over. Once it was over, obviously after the conference is before the next conference. But I remember that feeling of relief and pride that was associated with getting something that big and that significant in so many people's and so many students' young lives to get something accomplished like that. As someone who was responsible for the overall organization, I had only limited opportunities to sit in the various committee rooms. So I did not learn, and I was not able to follow a lot of the contents, a lot of the resolutions that were passed, a lot of the debates that were going on, because you, as someone in my role back then, you had to, you know, go between and travel between the different committee rooms across the Universitätsclub where we hosted the conference at in that year, and so I didn't really get a in-depth view and in-depth impressions of what was being done at the conference through the delegates. I did read up on it, obviously. I read up the preparation material. As I prepared, which was my responsibility, the annual report for the year. I looked into the resolutions that were passed, and I came away with a sense of importance for the United Nations, something that actually influenced some of my work later. I did my master's thesis on the role of the United Nations in US policy against Iraq, and I was one of the editors, together with my dear friend Nina, who's also a BIMUN SINUB alumna, to edit a book on the United Nations in Bonn. So I guess those are some of the results and some of the takeaways that I had from the conference. The organization in general, and my takeaways were, it all comes down to the team. It comes down to the teamwork, the people you work with, and the individual motivation. It was a very early exposure for me to navigate people that came into organizing BIMUN SINUB 2005 very idealistically, and to manage the different characters so that it would all pay off in December 2005. And that's something that was a very early learning experience in my studies. I was only 23 at the time, and it allowed me to see how different characters work with each other and how you can best use them as a team effort for a broader good, for a conference in that way. I also learned to navigate how to work with donors, fundraising, how to work with senior policy makers, such as in the city of Bonn and in the United Nations in Bonn, which gave me a sense of, at the end of the day, these people are just human beings, and so there's not necessarily a big need to be scared or to be overly defensive when you encounter these kind of individuals who are often very get to people, and very impressive individuals as you speak with them. But at the end of the day, we could convince them. I could convince them with my team effort and my personal investments, intellectual investments, that they were part of something bigger. They too were part of something bigger. And so that's something that was definitely a takeaway, and I learned a lot from that conference and from organizing BIMUN SINUB 2005. There were two kinds of challenges really. The first one was purely organizational. Do you get the money? Do you get the logistics right? Do you get the contents in time? Do you draw enough people from all over the world as participants? Even that many that you get to select a little bit to only get the best and the brightest to your conference. And the organizational challenges also included navigating these interpersonal relationships that sometimes fracture under stress and under pressure. For instance, with my other executive committee members, where sometimes tensions flared high under the stress that was sometimes developing, and when you put a lot of individuals, a lot of motivated, highly motivated idealists into a room together, then chances are it's very challenging to get things right. It's a lengthy process to get these things on track, especially if it's not quite clear who's responsible for what and who's making the final calls. So that was very much on my mind as a challenge that persisted over the whole year of 2005. The personal challenges were less dramatic, I should say, but or less, not really dramatic, but they were also weighing down on me a little bit. I remember I had 4 wisdom teeth cut out because I'd been having a wisdom tooth infection that year, and I remember that was very painful. I wasn't able to speak or to talk for a couple of weeks after the surgery, which maybe some of my colleagues actually liked a little bit that year. And I was also away for 3 months. I had an internship secured at the United States Naval History and Heritage Command, which is the U.S. Navy Museum and the U.S. Navy research on its own history. And that internship put me into Washington, D.C. for about 8 or 9 weeks that year. And obviously that complicated things a little bit with the time difference and with my professional focus being drawn away from the United Nations, from Model United Nations in particular, to something that I found to be my calling, if you could say so, namely maritime history, maritime security, and naval history, naval strategy. Today, I am a naval strategist and an expert in maritime security. With all modesty, one of Europe's leading thinkers in maritime strategy, and someone who's working on sea power, and someone who's working on researching, analyzing the role that navies play in international relations, and some of the maritime security challenges around the world, from the Suez Canal to the South China Sea, from navies within NATO, within the European Union, but also the maritime role, for instance, of the United Nations. For instance, the United Nations interim force in Lebanon has a maritime, a navy component, UNIFIL, where the German Navy, which I also cover broadly and widely, has been involved in since 2006. I'm currently working at the Institute for Security Policy at Kiel University, where I am the head of the Center for Maritime Strategy and Security. We are Europe's only think tank dedicated to maritime security issues. And I'm also the chair of the Kiel Sea Power Series, which is our umbrella brand for innovative conferences and publications. I get to lead a small team of very dedicated individuals, which is great fun, which is in the city of Kiel, the old port city and the traditional navy town, a place with a lot of maritime history. Check out maritime history indeed, and a place that's been my home for the last decade or so. Sometimes when we have conferences here, which I'm responsible for, such as the Kiel International Sea Power Symposium, or the Baltic Sea Strategy Forum, or our academic symposium called the Dreizack, which is happening every other year here in Kiel, I am reminded of my time organizing BIMUN SINUB. The people change, the topics evolve, some gray hair is coming, but some of the particulars of organizing and being responsible for an international conference stay the same. So sometimes when my team and my colleagues are not looking, I smirk, I smile a little bit, and I feel reminded of Bonn. The second major benefit really is I've learned to function under high stress. That's something that's not necessarily always healthy, but that's certainly something that that was a takeaway from that time, from 2005. The third part is my takeaway or my benefit was it really introduced, the conference really introduced me to my then hometown, Bonn, to the United Nations, to Bonn as an international city. Something that yielded my first job after my graduation. I worked for the city of Bonn in the International Affairs Office. And while I went away from the United Nations and from simulation exercises professionally, I have very fond memories of Bonn. But finally, and the fourth part really, and the most important, the most significant part overall is I made two lifelong friends, at least two lifelong friends. Met a lot of interesting people, but two very heartfelt friendships emerged. Brief shout out to Ronald, who was an ex-committee member for BIMUN 2003, and a big shout out to Nina, who was handling all things in 2004. I met both of them again in the advisory board after our respective times in the executive committee. But these two people have been great friends, partners in crime, but moreover great friends. And I hope that a lot of you who are watching this can make similar experiences, whether it's organizing BIMUN SINUB, whether it's participating in these Model United Nations, and certainly once you make the next step, moving away from simple exercises or simulation conferences to the real world, that you have these same takeaways. And I wish to congratulate BIMUN SINUB on its 20th conference. What an amazing, amazing achievement. I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of all the founding work that we were able to do, but to see it blossom into now the 20th conference and really 20 years of BIMUN SINUB, that's really an amazing achievement. Bravo Zulu.